India's foreign minister is accusing Canada of welcoming criminals into this country. He made the comments when asked for his reaction to the arrest of 3 Indian nationals late last week. All 3 men are charged in the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Canadian citizen and well-known Sikh activist who was shot dead last June outside a Gurdwara in Surrey, British Columbia. Well, for his thoughts on the comments that we're hearing from the Indian Foreign Minister, we're now joined by the former BC Premier Ujjal Dosanjh. Mr. Dosanjh, thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you.
So India, as you know, takes great issue with Canada right now. And as we said, the foreign minister is stating this country is accepting Indian criminals as prospective immigrants. What do you make of that comment?
Well, I think that that's really an inappropriate comment. I mean, there are people that come to this country when people come and then they change. These students came. I don't know whether they came 3-4 years ago with the intention to kill somebody. And they happen to be Sikhs too. They're Indian citizens, but they're Sikhs. So is it some internecine thing, or is it some Indian agent pulling the strings from here or from India, or is it some gangster in India in jail that is pulling the strings of other gangsters? No one knows, but for the foreign minister of India to say that we willingly and knowingly accept criminals, I think that's a bit of a reach.
And when he went on to comment, he also said that Canada is his country's biggest problem and accuses all political parties of giving extremists legitimacy here in Canada under the guise of free speech. It makes me wonder, as we kind of go through the commentary of the foreign minister, is there anything to pull out of that? Are political leaders dropping the ball when it comes to concerns being expressed by a traditionally friendly country?
Absolutely. On that score, I think he is 1,000% correct. Our politicians, for votes, in close ridings, close contests, 1 or 2% make a difference. And there is Khalistani vote, 5 to 10% of the Sikhs may be Khalistanis, and they will vote for the parties that don't stop them. The fact is that they have taken shelter, the politicians have taken shelter, refuge, under the rubric of freedom of expression for too long. They've seen violence happen from our country, Canada. They've seen violence, AK-47s being paraded around in the posters in Surrey, in Brampton, and other places, and they've said nothing. And, they can go a bit further and say, India is a friendly country. India is a democracy, faltering perhaps at this moment. We don't want Quebec to separate from us. Therefore, we don't want a dismemberment of a friendly country. We don't support what you're doing. You have the right to ask for that, but you have no right to perpetrate violence here or in India in the name of that, because we don't support a dismemberment of that country. Nobody has said that clearly. What they have said, both Mr. Harper and Mr. Trudeau, we have our system of laws, we have rule of law, and we have freedom of expression. We can't really tell people not to speak out. It is not the speaking out. It's the organizing. It is the disrupting. It's the sending money from here through Pakistan or directly to India. Mr. Nijjar was on their wanted list for several crimes that he committed after he had been in Canada. I don't know whether those are trumped up charges or real charges. But the fact is that India made several requests for him to be sent back to India, and our government ignored them, basically saying, you don't understand our laws. And, that may be so. But I believe Canadian politicians are complicit in what the Khalistanis are doing in this country.
Let me unpack a bit about that, though, because as you say, there are different statements that politicians could be making around the situation of Khalistan. And for people who don't know, that is the movement within the Sikh community to create a Sikh homeland out of India. But, I wonder, when you talk about political calculations, if they actually made that statement, how badly would it hurt a political party within the Sikh community, do you think?
Not badly at all. Look, I fought these guys in the 80s. And despite their united opposition to me in British Columbia, I mean, all of the temples from all over British Columbia and some from outside of British Columbia, Khalistani temples and Khalistani people, all of them opposed me. I still got nominated. I became the leader of the NDP despite their opposition. And despite their opposition, I was one of the most popular politicians, even though my party was the least popular party in British Columbia at that time. So you tell me about it.
So if you were to give advice, because at this point we have seen a deterioration in the relationship between Ottawa and New Delhi, if you were to give any advice to this government or any government to follow, what would it be as to how to handle this case? Or this relationship?
You can't go back on how Mr. Trudeau handled it, but it would be to actually say, look, it's easy for a democracy to say about another democracy that we don't want dismemberment of friendly countries. We don't support it. We want to tell you that. And therefore, please don't disrupt the unity or integrity of that country. We don't support that. That's all they need to say. And if they ever said that, I guarantee you, India's mood, it's not just Mr. Modi. All politicians in India do not like what Canada is doing. Mr. Modi is perhaps more extreme than others in the way he views Canada or his foreign minister views Canada. But I was in India in May last year and October, some months ago. All politicians detest what Canadian politicians have allowed Khalistanis to do from this land, including Air India.
Mm-hmm. Now, the three men that were charged last week will be tried. The RCMP also made it known that other investigations are taking place right now. How concerned should Canada be about the impact that those investigations will have on relations with India?
If politicians do what I'm suggesting they do, then no matter what happens with the investigations, my sense would be that the Indian politicians would be saying, well, this is a bit of a bump. Let's get over it. Let's cooperate with these individuals and with Canada and get over the bump. Because ultimately it is in our interest as Indians and Canadians as countries to get along. I mean, there aren't too many democracies in the world.
Ujjal Dosanjh, I always appreciate the insight. Thank you for this.
Good to talk to you. Thank you.